My name is Kaelith Sterling, and I am 28 years old. Tonight, I am standing at the absolute center of the Event Horizon Lab, a subterranean architectural masterpiece buried 200 meters beneath the frost-bitten granite of Zurich. To the elite world of science and global finance, this place is the birthplace of the future, the site where Sterling Quantum has finally achieved quantum supremacy. Tonight, my son, Cyrus, has delivered it. We have bridged the gap between our world and the quantum realm. He gestures to Cyrus, who is 31 and radiates the polished, shallow brilliance of a media darling. Cyrus adjusts his bespoke tuxedo, a smirk of absolute arrogance playing on his lips as he gazes at the cameras. Cyrus is the public face, the one who does the 60 Minutes interviews, the man who couldn't explain the Heisenberg uncertainty principle if his life depended on it. He knows he didn't write the algorithms. He knows he was at a ski resort in St. Moritz while I was manually recalibrating the cryostats at 4 a.m. And he knows that tonight, the world will crown him a god. But Victor's voice drops an octave, becoming somber and dangerous. Progress is often shadowed by betrayal, and it is with a heavy heart that I must address a security breach of unprecedented proportions. My daughter, Kaelith, has been caught in an attempt to export our core encryption keys to an unauthorized server in the Pacific. She sought to weaponize her family's genius for her own petty gain. I feel the blood vanish from my skin, a crushing weight settling on my chest that makes every breath feel like I'm inhaling glass. I try to step forward, to shout that I was the one who discovered Cyrus's back-channel communication with a rival defense contractor, but the words die in my throat. Every person in that room, scientific peers who once cited my anonymous papers, family lawyers who saw me grow up, turns on me with a collective, cold-blooded disgust. In an instant, I am no longer a scientist. I am a digital terrorist. Therefore, Victor booms, his voice trembling with a masterful performance of fatherly grief. I will not let the Sterling name be tarnished. I ask you all to bear witness to this cleansing. Who agrees that Kaelith Sterling is stripped of her credentials, her inheritance, and her place in the scientific community? Who agrees she is banished from this lab and this family forever? Hands begin to rise. It is a slow, synchronized wave of rejection. 1, 20, 100, 200. The betrayal is absolute. I look at my mother, Helena. She is a woman of high society and low courage, a silent participant in Victor's tyranny. She looks at me for a split second, her eyes wet with a weak, cowardly pity, and then she looks away, raising her hand with the same elegant grace she uses to sign a check. That is the moment my world truly freezes. The betrayal smells of ozone, expensive wine, and the bitter, sharp tang of my own heartbreak. You've been a ghost in these halls for 30 years, Kaelith, my father says, his voice flat and final. Now, the ghost is gone. I stand there, a single shadow in a room of blinding light, feeling the silk of my dress like a leaden weight. I thought I had reached the end of my sanity, but I was wrong. Because 30 seconds later, the massive, 6-inch thick blast doors of the Event Horizon Lab chime with a deep, subsonic frequency. The magnetic locks groan as they disengage. A man no one has seen in 15 years walks out. His footsteps are heavy and rhythmic, clanking against the obsidian floor with the weight of an incoming storm. He is wearing a worn, dark parka, his face etched with the lines of the mountain wind. He is carrying a strange, heavy copper cylinder, a component of an original quantum computer that predates my father's firm. Professor Thorne, the man my father branded a madman and erased from the textbooks a decade ago, the man who was actually the real inventor of the Sterling Q architecture. He doesn't look at the crowd. He doesn't look at Victor. He looks only at me. The wave function has collapsed, Kaelith, he says, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrates in the chests of the guests. And the observer has finally arrived to reveal the lie. To understand how I became a ghost in a palace of high-frequency light, you have to understand the Sterling household. We didn't live in a home. We lived in a data collection center. Growing up, Sterling meant learning that your value was measured in the number of patents you could produce before puberty. Cyrus is 3 years older than me. From the microsecond he was born, Victor declared him the prince of probabilities. But to me, as the low-frequency hum of the dilution refrigerators vibrates through the soles of my shoes, it feels like a high-tech sepulcher designed to bury my life's work. The air down here is unnervingly still, chilled to exactly 18 degrees Celsius, and filtered so thoroughly that it lacks the organic scent of the surface world. Instead, it tastes of ozone, liquid nitrogen, and the sterile metallic tang of the massive supercomputers that line the walls like silent, obsidian sentinels. Cyrus was the son, the golden child who could do no wrong, even when he failed his basic calculus exams. He had the easy, manipulative laugh of a cult leader and the technical curiosity of a housefly. My father turned the entire west wing of our estate into a monument for Cyrus. Every participation trophy from prep school, every ghost-written article in Science Today, was framed in brushed steel and lit by museum-grade spotlights. There was no room for me in that light. I was the girl who was sent to the cold room, the windowless basement laboratory where the first-generation quantum processors were kept at temperatures colder than deep space. And me? I was the girl who spent her teens hunched over a workstation, obsessed with the cold, hard logic of entanglement. I graduated at the top of my class at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology under a pseudonym, K. Thorne, because my father didn't want the sterling brand diluted by a daughter whom he claimed lacked the charisma for leadership. I finished my PhD in 3 years, living on cold caffeine and sleeping on a mattress in the server room because my father cut off my stipend, calling my research into quantum error correction a sentimental waste of resources that didn't help Cyrus's public image. I remember the day I brought home my master thesis, a revolutionary paper that proposed a way to keep qubits stable at room temperature. It was a breakthrough that would have won a Nobel. I brought it to him in his mahogany-paneled library, my heart thumping against my ribs with a hope I refused to let die. Surely, he will finally see that I am the one carrying his legacy. He didn't even put down his glass of 5-0-year-old scotch. He didn't even look at the abstract. He glanced at the title, let out a puff of acrid cigar smoke, and set his sweating glass of ice directly on the center of my hard-bound cover. I watched in agonizing, microscopic detail as the condensation from the glass created a dark, wet ring on the paper, drowning the words, summa cum laude. He looked up, his eyes bored and dismissive, and said, "Quantum algorithms? What are you going to do, Kaelith? Fix the Wi-Fi for Cyrus's future press conferences? Go to the cold room. Cyrus's team needs someone to manually check the liquid helium levels for the new array. Don't speak unless the sensors fail." That was the day I officially became a ghost. My kingdom was the cold room 3 floors below the luxury of the executive offices, where the air smelled of industrial coolant, burning circuits, and the dry, biting heat of the processors. I built my own secret corner in that bunker, using discarded parts I found in the obsolete bin, building a miniature quantum rig so complex it would make the NSA weep, while the rest of the world looked at Victor and Cyrus on the covers of Wired in Time. I was living in a hole. I was the one who actually designed the Sterling Q's entanglement bridge. I was the one who wrote the protocols that kept the billion-dollar machine from overheating. I was the one who stayed up for 120 hours straight when the processor desynchronized during the final test, manually recoding the logic gates while Cyrus was at a gala in New York. Victor never once stepped into the cold room. He never saw the 10,000 lines of code I wrote to fix the catastrophic design flaws in Cyrus's visionary interface. To him, I was the technician. Cyrus would laugh during board meetings, leaning back in his chair, and say, "Kaelith's great with the soldering iron and the wires, the janitorial work of physics, but she lacks the intuition of a true Sterling. She's a servant, not a visionary." Last New Year's Eve, as the family toasted with champagne in the penthouse, Cyrus smirked at me over his glass. "Kaelith, you look like a server room mole. When was the last time you saw a sun that wasn't on a monitor? You should try hacking yourself a personality, or at least a dress that doesn't smell of Freon. You're bringing down the aesthetic of the room." I just sipped my water and looked at the clock on the wall. I knew something they didn't. Above me, the ceiling is a lattice of glowing fiber optics, meant to simulate a starlit sky, but the light they cast is blue, cold, and merciless. It reflects off the polished obsidian floors in long, jagged streaks that look like cracks in the fabric of reality. Tonight is the day of supremacy, the official launch of the Sterling Q processor. I knew that Cyrus's revolutionary encryption for the Sterling Q was mathematically flawed. I knew that without my hidden Ghost Gate code a secret, counter-encryption layer I had added to the core, the entire system would be wide open to every intelligence agency on Earth within 48 hours of going live. I was the only thing keeping them from a global scandal that would end the family name. I stayed silent because of Professor Thorne. He had sent me an encrypted message from his mountain retreat months ago. "Kaelith, The Sterling name is a brand, but the quantum is a lie. Let them build their throne of silicon. When the first prime number is factored, the machine will tell the truth. Be the ghost architect, keep the logs, wait for the collapse. 3 years ago, the first collapse arrived. Not a mechanical collapse, but a moral one. 3 years ago, the silence of the Event Horizon Lab was shattered not by a scream, but by a catastrophic drop in pressure. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the numerical ghost of pi, the Sterling Q processor didn't just fail. It underwent a total moral collapse. I was in the cold room, my eyes burning from the glare of 48 hours without sleep, when the alarms began to wail. It was a haunting, subsonic frequency that made the very air in the lab feel like it was vibrating with dread. The dilution refrigerators, usually a steady, comforting hum, began to cough and sputter. On my monitors, the qubit stability charts the heartbeat of our empire, flatlined into a jagged, blood-red line of terminal decoherence. Cyrus, in his desperate, ego-driven attempt to impress a consortium of defense contractors from the East, had pushed a patch to the core OS without running a single simulation. He wanted to show them unlimited processing power before the contracts were signed. What he didn't realize, because he had never bothered to read my basic research, was that quantum logic is fragile. You cannot force a particle to be in two places at once. You have to coax it. Cyrus had tried to beat the universe into submission with a sledgehammer, and the universe had hit back. Within minutes, the billion-dollar Sterling Q array was essentially a pile of expensive, frozen silicon. The encryption keys of 3 major European banks' data we were supposed to be protecting during the pilot phase were being corrupted in real time. I watched the security feeds as Cyrus paced his executive office, sweat ruining his $3,000 suit. He was throwing expensive crystal decanters against the wall, hyperventilating, his visionary brain completely paralyzed by the reality of his own incompetence. He didn't even know where the emergency cooling valves were located. He was a captain who had crashed the ship and was now trying to hide in the lifeboats. My mother, Helena, entered the cold room at 4 a.m. She looked like a ghost herself, her silk robe dragging through a puddle of spilled liquid nitrogen, her face a mask of terror that finally made her look her age. She didn't look at the flashing red lights. She looked at me, her hands trembling as she reached for my shoulders. Kaelith, you have to stop it. You have to save us. Your father, his legacy is everything. If the banks find out Cyrus caused this, we'll lose the labs, the estate, the name. We'll be nothing. I looked at her, my fingers already flying across the terminal, rewriting the decoherence protocols in a language I had invented myself. I can stabilize the array, Mom. I can save the data, but I have to override Cyrus's admin log. I have to show the board that he bypassed the safety buffers. I have to tell Victor the truth. She gripped my arms, her fingernails digging into my skin with a strength born of pure, distilled cowardice. You must save the machine, but you must let the logs show that Cyrus was the one who fixed it. If the world knows he is a failure, your father will never recover. He will blame you for destroying his son. Be the ghost, Kaelith. If you love this family, you will vanish and let your brother be the hero one more time. That was the moment the entanglement of my loyalty finally snapped. My own mother was asking me to lobotomize my identity, to hand over my genius to a thief, just so they could keep their champagne and their lies. And, because I was still prisoner of my own hope for their love, I did it. I stayed up for 96 consecutive hours, in the freezing dark of the cold room. I rewrote the entire quantum kernel. I saved the banks. I saved the Sterling name. 200 of the most influential human beings on the planet are gathered here. Heads of state, shadowy intelligence directors, and tech billionaires with eyes like predatory sharks. They move through the lab in a daze of awe, clutching glasses of rare white wine that catch the blue light, whispering about the genius of Dr. Victor Sterling. They are toasting to a revolution they don't understand, standing on a stage built of my stolen equations. And then, I manually altered the timestamps so that the fix appeared to originate from Cyrus's terminal. The next morning, the headlines read, Cyrus Sterling, the boy who saved the digital world. Victor gave him a new penthouse in Singapore, and a $20 million performance bonus. I received a text from Cyrus while I was shivering under a blanket in the server room. Thanks for the janitorial work, Kay. Now get back in your hole. If you ever mention that patch to anyone, I'll tell Dad you were the one who crashed the system in a jealous fit. and we both know who he believes. But Cyrus, in his hollow arrogance, didn't realize that a quantum engineer doesn't just fix things. We observe. Inside that hero patch, I had embedded a ghost gate, a piece of non-local code that functioned like a digital black box. Every time Cyrus logged in to steal another one of my equations, every time he communicated with his shadowy buyers in the Pacific to sell our security vulnerabilities, the ghost gate recorded it. I wasn't just fixing a computer, I was building a guillotine. We returned to the gala, back to the Event Horizon Lab, 200 meters below the Earth. The blue light is cold and merciless. Cyrus is smirking at the cameras, his ego bloated to the size of a planet. The security guards are moving in, their hands on their holsters, ready to escort me to a federal prison for a crime I didn't commit. And then the blast doors open, and Professor Thorne walks in. He doesn't waste time with the security teams. He walks straight to the obsidian stage, his heavy parka dripping melted snow onto the floor. He pushes Victor aside, not with violence, but with the sheer weight of a truth that has been waiting 15 years to be told. My father, the god of physics, stumbles back like a confused old man. Victor, Eris's voice booms, amplified by the laboratory's acoustic resonance that I had secretly tuned to his specific frequency. You've spent decades measuring the universe in bits and bytes, but you've forgotten the most basic law of physics. Every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Eris? You're dead! You're a hallucination! Victor sputters, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. Security! This is a trespasser. Remove him! The security team men I had personally spent months assisting with their own security clearances and private debts stand as still as the granite walls. They don't look at Victor. They look at the floor. Eris places the heavy copper cylinder on the obsidian podium. Clang! The sound of metal on stone is the sound of the old world meeting the new. He twists the lid, and a holographic projector one I had hidden inside the cylinder months ago springs to life. The 360-degree LED sky above the lab suddenly flickers. The starfield disappears. In its place, a massive, glowing blue data visualization map begins to scroll. It's not a slideshow. It's a live stream of the Sterling Q's core audit logs, the ones that Cyrus thought he had deleted. Everyone in this room. Eris roars. Look at the stars. This is the Sterling Q's Ghost Gate. This is the actual record of the Day of Supremacy. The text is unmistakable, giant letters that everyone can see. User: Cyrus Sterling. Action: exporting encryption keys to server ID. Void, syndicate, macaw. Status: illegal. Author of block: Kaelith Sterling, the ghost architect. A horrified, collective gasp ripples through the crowd. The director of intelligence from the front row drops his glass. The heads of state start whispering in panicked, jagged tones. It's a hack! She's obsessed with me. She's trying to destroy our stock price. Cyrus screams, his voice high and shrill. The sound of a fraud who has run out of runway. He lunges for the cylinder, but Eris catches him by the throat with one hand and holds him there, pinned against the very stage he used for his lies. Then, the final blow. Eris presses a button, and the audio recording from 3 years ago fills the lab. It's the voice of my mother, Helena, sobbing in the cold room. Kaelith, you must let Cyrus take the credit. Your father can't stand the thought of being outdone by his daughter. Please, be the ghost for us. The room goes as cold as the dilution refrigerators. Victor looks at Helena. Helena covers her face and collapses into her seat. The Sterling legacy hasn't just been exposed, it has been vaporized. And now, Eris says, his voice dropping to a whisper that carries further than any shout. I stand near the back, partially obscured by a massive liquid nitrogen tank. My fingers are trembling, stained with the faint, invisible residue of thermal paste and the micro-scratches earned from thousands of hours spent soldering quantum circuits in the dark. I spent 6 years of my life, my entire youth, in the shadow of these machines. The screen zooms in on the quantum logic gates, the very heart of the machine. It isn't the Sterling logo. It's a custom-designed icon of a girl sitting in a server rack, holding a dead star. Below it, the text, Concept, Design, and Quantum Stabilization by Dr. Kaelith Sterling. Status, The Observer. I didn't steal your keys, Father, I say, stepping out of the shadows, my charcoal dress flowing like liquid smoke. I was the only one who had the keys. You wanted a prince, so you ignored the person who was actually holding the universe together for you. Well, your prince is a traitor, and your daughter is the only one who knows how to turn this machine off. The Interpol agents I had spent months feeding data through Eris's mountain server step out from the back of the room. They don't go for Eris, they go for Cyrus. Cyrus Sterling. You're under arrest for high treason, international espionage, and corporate fraud. Victor falls into his chair, staring at the obsidian floor as if he expects it to swallow him. Kaelith. Why? Why would you kill the name? Because the name was built on a lie. Father, I say, looking at the wet ring on the library table in my memory. The fallout was not a sudden explosion. It was a slow, agonizing slide into total entropy, a thermal death of a legacy that I had once slaved to protect. By morning, Sterling Quantum was not just bankrupt. It was radioactive in the eyes of the global market. Every head of state who had toasted my father the night before now scrambled to issue press releases denouncing him. The stock didn't just crash. It vanished into a vacuum. Victor didn't just lose the labs. He lost the very fabric of his existence. Within 48 hours, the Nobel Committee issued an unprecedented statement reviewing his previous contributions. His honorary degrees were stripped away one by one, like a soldier being dishonorably discharged in public. The Event Horizon Lab, once the Jewel of Zurich, was seized by a court-appointed liquidator and eventually reopened under a government trust, renamed the Thorne Sterling Public Research Center. But Victor's name was etched in a smaller font, a permanent reminder of his second-place status. My father was left with nothing but an old, fraying lab coat and a mounting pile of legal debts that would take 3 lifetimes to pay off. I watched from the balcony of my new office as the moving trucks emptied the Sterling mansion, the house where my name was never spoken unless it was to ask for a status update on Cyrus's failures. I saw them carry out the brushed steel frames of Cyrus's fake awards, dumping them into a container like common scrap metal. My mother, Helena, suffered the most brutal transition. Now, she was moved into a small, gray apartment on the cold, wind-swept edge of the city, where the only luxury was the quiet. She called me every single night for a month, her voice losing its polished socialite edge and becoming thin, sharp, and utterly desperate. "Kaelith, please," she would whisper into the receiver, the sound of a cheap electric heater rattling in the background. "Your father is staring at a blank whiteboard for 14 hours a day. He doesn't even remember how to eat. He just draws equations that don't balance. He's broken, Kaelith. You're a billionaire now. Your new firm, The Observer, is taking over the global security market. Buy back the house, Kaelith. Save your father's pride. He's an old man now. He can't survive the shame of this poverty." I sat in my new office, 60 floors above the city, looking at the real stars, the ones that didn't need fiber optics to shine. I remembered her grip on my arm 3 years ago in the cold room. I remembered her asking me to disappear so her son could keep his fake reputation. "Mom," I said, my voice as steady as an atomic clock. I spent 30 years being the operational necessity for a family that viewed me as a ghost. I'm not the glue anymore. I'm the observer. And I don't save people who only let me exist in the cold room. You chose the prince over the daughter. Now you have to live with the man you protected. I've already sent a check to a trust that will cover your rent and basic medical bills for the next 5 years. That is all the glue I have left for you. I didn't block her number, but I never answered again. I realized that some people don't want to be saved. They just want to be comfortable while they watch you drown. I was the one who wrote the error correction code that allowed the qubits to stabilize for more than a microsecond. But in the gold-embossed programs held by the guests, my name does not exist. I am merely Assistant 402. Dr. Victor Sterling, my father, stands on the central platform, illuminated by a halo of white light that makes his silver hair look like an artificial crown. I watched the logs of my old servers one last time, seeing Cyrus's name flagged as inactive, incarcerated, and I hit the delete key on his entire user profile. Today, I sit in my own office on the top floor of the Sterling Thorne Tower, a building I designed to be a beacon of transparency. My company is simply called The Observer. We don't just build quantum computers. We build the most advanced security systems in the world, systems that are built on the bedrock of mathematical truth, not marketing. My name isn't on a neon sign. It doesn't need to be. My name is in the stability of the global data. I am no longer invisible. I am no longer Assistant 402. When I walk into a summit at the United Nations, or a private meeting with global leaders, the room goes silent. They don't ask me to fix their Wi-Fi or solder a circuit. They wait for me to speak. They ask for my expert signature. They know that without the observer seal, their data is just a house of cards waiting for a breeze. On the center wall of my office, framed in brushed titanium and lit by a dedicated, warm spotlight, is my PhD thesis. The dark, round water ring from my father's scotch glass is still there, right in the center of the cover. I look at it every single morning before I start my work. It is the only artifact I kept from my old life. It reminds me that the marks people try to leave on you to diminish you, the coffee stains, the insults, the erasures, don't define your existence. They are just the surface. It's the quantum heart you build beneath them that matters. That stain isn't a symbol of my father's disrespect anymore. It's a trophy of my endurance. It's the point of origin for my freedom. It represents the moment I realized that their approval was a ceiling I had to break through. 6 months ago, Victor showed up in the lobby of my building. He didn't have an appointment. He sat there for 7 hours, wearing an old trench coat that smelled of damp wool and cheap tobacco. He looked like a man who had spent every night of the last year being haunted by the ghosts of the legacy he traded for a lie. His hands, once so steady that he could solder a microgate without a tremor, were now a constant shaking mess. When I finally went down to see him, the glass elevators whispering as they descended, he stood up, his legs shaky and his hands trembling with age. He held out a small, velvet box. Inside was a piece of the original Sterling Q processor, the one part the liquidators had let him keep as a sentimental relic. "Kaelith," he whispered, his voice a raspy thread that barely reached my ears. "I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I was blind. I'm starting a small boutique research firm, just me and 2 old doctoral students in a garage in Winterthur. We're researching room temperature superconductors. Real work. I need your mind. I need my daughter. Please, take the processor. It was always yours. Let's rebuild the Sterling name together. I'll give you 51%. I looked at the processor, a beautiful, cold piece of machinery that had been used to buy my silence and my brother's lies. Then I looked at the man who had called me a void in front of the world's most powerful people. "I don't need a piece of silicon to tell me my worth, Father," I said, my voice echoing in the vast, 40-foot glass lobby I had designed to be acoustically perfect. "And I don't need your recognition to know who I am. I've already built my own name, and unlike yours, mine isn't built on a foundation of ash and theft. Keep the part. Sell it. Use the money to pay your researchers a fair wage. For once in your life. I've already paid my debt to you with 30 years of silence. The ledger is closed. There is no Sterling name to rebuild. There is only the truth." I turned around and walked back to the private elevators. I didn't look back to see if he was crying. I didn't look back to see him slump into the lobby chair like a discarded blueprint. I didn't look back at all. My future didn't have room for his regrets. I've learned a lesson that no quantum equation, no matter how complex, could ever teach. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are the doors that you get to control. You get to decide who is worthy of entering your life. And more importantly, you get to decide when it's time to lock the door and walk away for good. He is the pinnacle of scientific authority, a man who has mastered the art of looking like he holds the secrets of the universe in his palms. He doesn't see a daughter when his gaze happens to sweep past my corner. He sees an operational necessity, a biological machine that produces data for his legacy. You are not responsible for the wreckage of people who tried to use you as a load-bearing wall for their own ego. My name is Kaelith Sterling. I am a quantum physicist. I am an architect of the future, and for the first time in my life, the wave function has collapsed, and I am exactly where I was meant to be. I am the observer of my own destiny. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of a boundary you've been afraid to set, or a truth you've been hiding to protect people who don't deserve your silence, please hit like and subscribe. You are not a void. You are the architect of your own universe. Speak up. The world is waiting to observe you. And I promise you, the view from the top is worth every single agonizing step of the climb. I'm Kaelith. And tonight, the only hum I hear is the sound of my own freedom. I can feel the cold sweat pooling under the collar of my charcoal silk gown, a dress I bought with my own meager savings. A fleeting, desperate hope that tonight he would finally acknowledge me. I wanted him to stand before this crowd and say that his daughter was the architect of the Sterling Q. I wanted him to see the PhD I defended in secret because he told me my theories were a distraction from Cyrus's career. Victor picks up a small titanium stylus and taps it against the side of a glass beaker. The sound is sharp, high-pitched, echoing through the pressurized chamber like the snap of a bone. The room falls into an immediate, heavy silence, the kind of silence that precedes a disaster. "Fellow seekers of truth," Victor begins, his voice a rich, authoritative baritone that resonates through the custom-tuned acoustics of the hall. "Sterling Quantum has promised you the key to the impossible.